4th BCT. And he's going to join us this morning and tell us a little bit about how God's been working in his life and his story. So if you'd welcome Steve.
I appreciate all your support, even though you're a Marine. So, well, you know what Army stands for, don't you?
Follow the Marine.
Are we Marines yet? You know, we always want to be just like you. So, I want to thank Richard and the church for giving me this opportunity to share a little about what the Lord is doing through his vineyard throughout Afghanistan. It's pretty amazing, and you'll see a video here in about 5 minutes or so about some of the things that the Lord did for me. But before that, I want to tell a couple other stories. There's a vineyard missionary over there right now. His first name's Jim, and he's been in Afghanistan for over a year. I found him through Mark Fields. He's the national director of missions in the vineyard, and he said, "Hey, talk to Jim. He'll tell you what it's really like over there." So I emailed him when he's been in the States and able to call Jim and see what the Lord's doing for him. What he does is tent making. It's a biblical term for working, but then sharing the gospel when you can. As you probably know, religious freedom is not there in Afghanistan. We pray that it will be there sometime, but he has to do things quietly. So what he does is works in construction, but then his free time he works with the locals. He's learning the local languages, and he's discipling people. So he's over there doing what Paul and others in the Bible have done. They've gone over, learned more about different cultures, learned the language, trying to share the love of Jesus Christ. So please keep him and his family in your prayers. They were just able to recently move over there, but they're having challenges with visas because of all the political situations right now. It's challenging to go over there. So again, please keep Jim and his family in prayers as they're in Afghanistan. Second story I want to tell is how sometimes God uses coincidences. I like to call them God incidences to show that he's still here. He's doing things, working situations when we don't realize that he's really in control behind the scenes. So my office is in East Afghanistan. I was there for about a year. You'll hear more about that later. And in the middle of nowhere. So in walks this chaplain. Her first name's Dawn, and she was visiting our base to check on some of her psychological operations soldiers. She's just passing through. She visits throughout the country. So she walks in, we start chatting, and asking, "So who are you with?" "With the vineyard." I'm like, "What?" There's only like 10 military chaplains in the whole world that are vineyard, as far as I know. And what she do, she walks into my little office in the middle of East Afghanistan. So again, it was a little hint from God. It's like, "Hey, Steve, I'm in control. I kind of know where people are. I know where to send them." So it was very encouraging to me that in the middle of country, God can say, "Hey, I haven't forgotten about you." And it's the same with you all in your lives. You may not see how God is moving or what God is doing, but I encourage you that he does want the best for us and hasn't forgotten what we're going through, what the stress, the trials, financial problems, whatever we're going through. The Lord knows and remembers. So if it works, we're going to try to play this video summary, I think Mike's over there, of the first 6 months or so, what happened, and I'll kind of narrate as it's playing. You're going to hear Danny Daniels in the background doing music. He did some music up at one of the small groups here recently. So here we are before we deployed doing Thanksgiving outreach to some of the families that couldn't afford turkeys. So there's my commander and some of our coworkers. There we are doing a singles trip in Breckenridge, how to avoid Mary McJerk. Praise to death. Here we are in Breckenridge doing a family retreat. That's Brian, my assistant, and the Army's been very good paying for these retreats to help our families survive and thrive during deployment. There's another shout out to Brian and his family. Strong Bonds is the name of the program, finance and college. You might recognize that guy. By the way, thank you for paying my salary and the salary of all the military with your taxes. Thank you very much. There we are in Afghanistan. I'm giving the opening prayers. We're transferring the authority see our interpreter there. So it's good to dedicate our deployment to him. There I am flying in my battle rattle. I got to fly about 100 times last year in a helicopter trip with our soldiers around Afghanistan. Here's Brian again, my assistant. He's a staff sergeant. Very squared away, good shape warrior. And he's a Christian. Great. Okay, he was messing with me. He was going to paint all the trim on the chapel this neon green. It's like, what are you doing? Did you ask me what color I like? They were just messing with me. We were able to renovate the chapel there with the help of KBR and so on, and got some new trim going, new doors. The Lord was good to have a chapel waiting for me. We were able to make it a little better. Air conditioning. Say thank God for air conditioning. 120 degrees in the summer at least. So. Here it is before we renovated the inside. Brian was doing an Xbox tournament to get some of the guys in. He'd open it up in prayer and then let them have fun, do life together. So he was a big football fan, so he got some of the guys in to have fun as the war. There Brian is getting promoted with our executive officer, Major Dan. So that was a highlight for him last year he was deployed. And okay. That's our brigade chaplain he's hugging there. Chaplain Paul Matty's a priest, very supportive, very great guy. Some of the other people we work with there. Okay, you'll see some bandanas with guys now. There's our Psalm 91 bandanas out there. And they sent me a bunch of them, so I gave it to our MP. That's good for that. That is Eric with USAID. He and I both went to CU Denver, so we had to take his pictures in to see you and say, hey, don't forget us. Now this is Afghanistan, a place called Colony. It's going to look an awful lot like Colorado Springs, you guys. So you're going to see some panorama shots here. Very nice with the mountains, you've got the trees and so on. It's beautiful, but it's also very dangerous. We lost one of our soldiers there, you'll hear more about it, and we were attacked, dislocated and some others. So it may look serene and peaceful, but in reality, because of Al-Qaeda and Taliban, it's not that way. There's the infamous Tora Bora Mountains where Osama bin Laden may have been years ago, so I don't know about you, it looks a lot like Pikes Peak, looking up the mountain when we're in winter. Here I am seeing some of the guys, they're fixing the vehicles, the mine-resistant, armor-protected vehicles. Thank God for those. There's a lot of safety involved with these. Here's a shot of one of the rivers from one of the helicopters I was in. So you had a mix between the mountains, the rivers, the valleys, the greens. So great seeing Afghanistan. Okay, not quite as big as the Walmart I went shopping at last night. And for some reason, I have a feeling they haven't gotten this authorized with Walmart Corporation. So what this guy did was just put up a banner and said, this is my Walmart, GM's Walmart. They accept Visa MasterCard, by the way. Okay, this guy in front of the box, Dr. Murphy, you'll hear more about him later. One of the side projects I did, you did too, was to get school supplies from needy Afghans. William, the guy in the shirts and shorts there, he had the project, I'll tell you about it in a little bit. There's a chapel in Garcia area that the first sergeant made, and great place of comfort in the middle of nowhere. And he made some nice chairs that I enjoy watching the sunsets. And again, thank God for air conditioning. I don't know how we would have survived with that. Inside, they did a nice job decorating it. You'll see some rosaries hanging. The priest came by to make sure the Catholic soldiers were taken care of as well. Michael, see that guitar? Do you have a cool one like that with little leaves on it? So the guys would have fun playing the instruments when they can and worshiping and praying. There's William again. You'll hear more about him. And amazing man. Amazing what he did. That's inside the chapel there in Garcia. Okay, this is on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, a place called Torkham Gate. You'll see a mosque in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll see another shot in a minute. Almost 100% Muslim country there. And so everywhere you went, you'd see mosques. You'd hear 5 times a day the prayer calls. I didn't need an alarm in the morning. I was woken up by their prayers. Here's inside the chapel at Torkham Gate. Brian's leading worship there before we get started. So had some faithful that would come out to services. Okay, this is the memorial for Staff Sergeant Randy Haney. Several hundred people showed up for it. Thank God I only had to do one memorial for my guys. A lot of guys from Carson has to do more. 4th Brigade, we brought 4,000 with us to Afghanistan. We had to do memorials for about 50 guys. Okay, so please keep their families in your prayers. It's obviously it's devastating to go overseas and not come back. So I did get a chance to see Katie Haney and her family when I was on R&R. Here we are giving him the due honor. His weapon with his helmet on top of the ID tags. Remember, he is a fallen hero for our country. I made this brick of the city we were in, so all about this memorial to him. Say, hey, we will never forget, Randy, what you did for me. Here's Brian, my assistant, giving him honor at his memorial stand. See the awards he received, the picture of him on the right. Now, the kids. Kids broke my heart, touched my heart. There they are, taking a bath, right outside our gate. Not the best living conditions, as you can tell. And so, what did you all do? What did America do? They sent me 200 boxes of supplies, school supplies, clothes, and so on, that I was able to distribute throughout Afghanistan. This is a school tent that Brian and I found where an Afghan was teaching the kids English. So I started emailing people, say, hey, can you send stuff over? There's need. They're sitting in the middle of a tent, no air conditioning on the floor, trying to learn English. We take it for granted sometimes the great education we have here in America. So thank you, Vineyard, for sending some supplies, praying for us. William Burnett did a great job praying last year. Here's a real school building near us that we found, so we started a more official project, as well as a provincial reconstruction team, mainly Air Force. They were able to do some renovations and help out the school. You can see some swing sets and so on in the back, but they don't have swings, so they're doing what they can, but they don't have the finances like we do. That's Sarah, our interpreter. You'll see the females there have their heads covered, very traditional. The girls have schools separate than the boys because of their culture. There we are meeting with the principal and some of the teachers, trying to figure out what they need, how we can help them, how we can support them, because they're our next door neighbors. Part of our mentality is take care of those near us and those far away, no matter where we are. Diane with a couple other captains meeting with the leaders, trying to figure out how we can help them while we're there. So one of the ways we did it was we went into the classrooms and we would have interpreters, and again, all the supplies that America sent we would give to the kids, but we wouldn't give it as handouts. We'd make them earn it. We would have little quizzes, ask them, what's your favorite sport? Tell us a little about your family. So it's not a direct giveaway, that they have to realize that, hey, if I go to school, which isn't necessarily mandatory, we saw a bunch of kids not in school, we said, hey, go to school, it's good for you, you'll learn. ISAF, you see that on his shoulders. International Security Assistance Force, the U.S. is not the only one over there. We are there in collaboration with NATO, with Europe, to do what we can to assist the Afghans, teach them how to be better police, have a better army, to run their country the way they want to run it. So Brian would tell sports stories and ask them questions about sports and give them school supplies and so on as reward. They're learning how to read and write. Pashto and Dari are the main languages over there. And again, they don't have the resources we do. So we're giving them booklets and so on. The kids were just cute. I just love the way they gather around us, and we'd have to keep it controlled to make sure they got what they wanted. Remember that picture? I'll tell you more. Operation International Children sent 30 boxes plus school supplies. More on that later. There's the chapel after the renovation inside. We were able to get it painted, the new floor, and so on. So when I left, Chaplain Ted Randall and his assistant were able to take it and improve what we had started, and what those before us had started as well. Some new doors, and make a nice place to work. Okay, so that's a summary of the year in pictures. Thanks, guys. You can go ahead and get rid of that. Thanks. So, there were 7 bases I had to visit monthly to go check on our people. So again, it was safer and quicker to fly. There was any Canadians in the room or former Canadians? Thank you, Canada. There is a company called Molson Air, and the U.S. contracted Canadian helicopters to fly us around because the military helicopters were busy doing force protection, making sure we were safe, and so I would catch a civilian helicopter, once a week to go see our people all around East Afghanistan. We were based out of Finley Shields, and that's where I spent most of the time. Once a week I'd go traveling, but throughout the week I would check on our warriors on the base, see how they're doing, counsel them, and do all the school supply outreach locally that I mentioned. And Fenty was the headquarters next door. It was where the day was centered, and we had soldiers over there, so we'd do all our redeployment briefings over there. And they were attacked at Fenty. They were attacked as we were leaving Bagram Airfield, Kalagoosh. So please keep our warriors in your thoughts and prayers, and the civilians over there supporting them, because read in the newspaper, people are getting attacked every day over there. It's peaceful here, but not necessarily there in other parts of the world. Connolly is the place you saw on the video where the mountains were. Again, the Al-Qaeda, Taliban have a stronghold out there, so it's where we had a room when we visited. We'd have chapel services, and the enemy ordered it, so we took it out. Thank God nobody got killed. There were some people injured there. One of our staff sergeants is still in the hospital in Texas for the next year and a half. He's healing up. So again, keep those who are wounded in our thoughts and prayers as well. Garcia, I got to tell this story. Remember Dr. Rafi, the Afghan? He's a medical doctor that studied in Jalalabad, and so he's an interpreter at that base because he knows English and the local language. William So is a specialist in the Army, and he's a medic, and he has some free time, so he did kind of what I did. In his free time, he would gather supplies and distribute them, but he took the little part I did and just took off. They had villages in the area that he was able to hop in convoys with his commander, and then they would take school supplies out, they would drop off clothing, all this medical outreach. So William actually started the website helpafghanistan.net and is continuing to build what the Lord did through us last year. Now, again, got into this, how God can use a little something. Remember that picture of the tent school where we were handing out school supplies? Sent that to Officers Christian Fellowship. It's a fellowship around the world, and they printed it in one of their newsletters. And so what happened was a retired Fulbright colonel saw the picture, and he said, "Hey Steve, you need to get in contact with Operation International Children. They'll help you out." So I contacted them. They sent us 30 boxes of supplies, those big boxes. And it turns out the organization was founded by Gary Sinise. You know him, he's the actor from Lieutenant Dan, Forrest Gump. He's also on CSI New York. Great supporter of the military. And so what William does, man, this guy's an entrepreneur. He finds out that Gary's going to Afghanistan, so he checks with the chain of command. Says, "Hey sir, can I contact Gary, see if he'll come see us at Garcia?" It's like, "Sure, go ahead." So he has to go up to the Pentagon to get approved, and it worked. Gary was in Bagram and doing some concert with his band, and then they took a Black Hawk helicopter with a 2-star, flew out to the middle of nowhere in East Afghanistan. It's the only place he visited. He brought 15 pallets of school supplies and so on. And again, he does this because he's so supportive of what we're doing. And again, God was able to use just a little picture of a tent school, us being humble, then God takes what all of us do. Start small and then just blow us away with what the Lord does through us. If only we're willing to step out, take that first step. Torkham Gatum, I mentioned the border of Pakistan, as well as the area called Bulldog. It's an area where Morningstar Development is building a community center. You may know Morningstar, they're based here in Colorado Springs, and part of their mission is to reach out and make a center in the middle of nowhere where people can come and learn how to do computer work, how to do agriculture, how to do all these different things. It's a non-governmental organization supported by the military. The military has their own projects, but sometimes when civilians come in, they're able to do things more freely than we can. Daniel Batchelder's president, he's here in the Springs. I met with him for coffee beforehand, and he came to see me and everybody 3 times last year, because part of his mission is to go back and forth, raise support, see what the Lord is doing, and they built several community centers around Afghanistan. And they're building one out near Torkham Gate, Momandara area, and they are dedicating it to Captain Jenna Wilcox. She was one of our airmen on the professional reconstruction team. She survived the IED in Afghanistan. She goes home on R&R afterwards, and unfortunately passed away in a streetcar accident. And so we are dedicating that community center to her, Momandara, because she helped out with the blueprints. So again, Lord be with her husband and family and friends. Now next door to us in Finley Shields was a small farm called Huey. And again, the Lord was opening new doors for ministry for me. I call this my 3rd deployment. It's really my 2nd and a half. I spent a year in Kuwait, only 4 months in Iraq because most of my soldiers were in Europe. And then this time I was able to spend more and more time with locals because we could literally walk from one base to the other through the Afghan village, and that's where we saw the schools. I was able to meet an Afghan army chaplain, the word for them is mullahs, and chatted a little bit, used an interpreter. They see my cross on my cover and my chest. We explained to him, as well as another man I'll tell you about in a minute, about the religious freedom we have in America. That people can choose what religion they want, compared to Afghanistan, where it's a practically 100% Muslim country. There's a lot of persecution going on right now there for Christians. You may have seen it in the media. Even though the Afghan Constitution and the UN declarations that they signed off on promise religious freedom, it's not happening yet. So please pray, please get involved in the process to ensure that Afghanistan has religious freedom like we do. I was able to meet as well the Director of Religious Affairs for Jalalabad. He's in charge of the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca. So again, I was able to explain to him how in the U.S. military we have religious freedom. Soldiers, airmen, sailors, and so on. We've got Marines, can't forget the Marines. All of them get to choose what religion they want to have, and the military chaplaincy will support them. If we can't take care of them, we'll refer to somebody else. That's how we've had chaplains in the military the last couple hundred years. So I want to start wrapping up with some scripture, since this isn't just a show and tell of what the Lord did for his vineyard. I want to share quickly about how the Lord has encouraged us from the beginning to not only be focused on ourselves, but on others. I did a little research on Afghanistan in the Bible. I'm reaching a little bit here if there's any Bible scholars in the room. But it appears that Afghanistan is roughly in the Medo-Persian area. It meets with the ancient Indo-Europeans of northwest Iran. Look at Ezra, Esther, Daniel, Isaiah. You'll see different references in the area near Afghanistan. So if you're more interested in that, see me later. I can email you a different message on Afghanistan in the Bible. Genesis 12:3 is about Abram's journeys to Egypt. The Lord said to him, here we go, bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So the Lord blesses us here in America. And what are we supposed to do with it? Yes, we're supposed to take care of our family and live a comfortable life. God tells us that throughout the Bible, but we aren't supposed to keep it to ourselves so that we can be a blessing to others. I'm not going to read the scripture. It's probably not even going to pop up there. But remember the bandana I showed you? Psalm 91 is what we call the warrior psalm, because it talks about how the Lord will protect us. The Lord will help us through the situations. Again, as we are coming back, we're getting the medical care we need, make sure we don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, and if we do, there are a lot of resources out there to help us heal from what we saw, what we went through. Isaiah 6:8 is a famous scripture that encourages us what to do. Isaiah is asking, he says, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me. So maybe the Lord is putting this on your heart. That maybe you feel that, I know at least several people in the room, the Lord is kind of nudging. If I remember right, last week we sent some people out to India. So the Lord may have us here in America for a season, but there may be times when the Lord wants us to go other countries, other side of the world, who knows. As long as you're willing. Back in college and so on, I started feeling that the Lord was calling me into full-time ministry. And since then, the Lord has sent me to 25 different countries around the world. So as long as you're willing, God will test you, work with you locally, and then once you're ready, He'll send you throughout the nation and around the world. Jeremiah 29:7. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I've carried you into exile. So God has love for cities. I don't have the current statistics, but my understanding is that people all around the world, spread out to the rural areas, to survive, they're moving to cities. And so we need to pray for the city, pray for Colorado Springs, pray for the different areas where we are, because there's something about the city that the Lord has a heart for and wants us to go reach cities around the world as well. Matthew 5:13-14 is a famous passage about Christ encouraging us and challenging us, saying that you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled. So we are the preservative. We are the one that gives flavor to the world because of our faith in Jesus and how it affects the world. He also says in verse 14, you are the light of the world. The city on the hill cannot be hidden. So we are the one that again gives hope and gives freedom because of what the Lord has done through us. I remember growing up in a denominational church, the youth group, we did the musical Godspell. If I would have had more notice, maybe I could have worked with Michael or Adam or whatever to do that song from Godspell. You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. There's something about Scripture and song. That's why the Vineyard uses so much worship. That as you link Scripture with music, it gets in your head, it gets in your spirit, and you'll remember it years and years to come. That's how the Lord uses worship. Little sidelights as we have a minute. I just started my first doctorate of ministry degree up at Denver Seminary. I had a class last week, and I sent Michael some images. I don't have them now. Would you believe scientists have done research? They've done brain scans on brains before prayer and worship and brains after prayer and worship. And there is significant change in the brain. There is something, God knows this. That's why God encourages us from the beginning to pray, to read the Word, to worship, and so on. That it literally changes our body as we worship. Our brain is changing, becoming more calm, becoming more focused on the Lord. And scientists can now track. Again, if you're interested in that, see me later. I can email you those brain scans of your brain before worship, your brain after worship. This is your brain on drugs.